when we start using Spirit Lake and Fish Lake. So that's kind of cool to know. So anyway, one of the things.
We're recording.
Oh, perfect. So one of the things we're trying to focus on is the game mechanics and more of a storyline. And the other thing, not to put you on the spot here, Justin, sure, but at least for the 2D graphics, they're really, really good. The ones that Justin did, the ones that I did are like really suck because I failed art and aced, multivariate statistics, so, which is true. So one way we thought, in addition to the storyline, was some kind of basic polish that we could, in areas where transitions, to make the game look more, and you're talking like about Zelda, which I know mostly about Zelda, that I watched Rhonda play it a lot. But I know, there's a lot of 2D story stuff in there, and partly it's because it's cheaper to make, but it also moves the story along. You don't, it's nice if we could have some 3D characters in there in the game. And I know Miranda and I talked initially about trying to make the whole game, everything in Unity, but it doesn't really make sense sometimes when you're forcing it. If you're doing math problems and explaining normal distribution, she did some cool math problems for it, but that doesn't always work. But if we have like the transition slides between levels, those could be something pretty artistic and cool. And it wouldn't cost us a ton of money to do that. And then, so we did it, something like this, which I think is very, very cool.
Have you guys ever played Paper Mario?
Paper Mario?
Yeah.
No, I stopped at like Super Mario and Mario Kart.
Is like 2D characters, so they're like made out of paper, but they're in a 3D environment.
Huh.
Yeah, I know it. Yeah. It's still 3D, but
cheaper to make a 3D environment, you know what I mean?
Okay.
You guys should look at it. I don't know.
All right, we'll take a look at it.
Yeah, definitely. Well,
I'll find some like screen action. I'll Google it. I'll like get YouTube right now and find it for you guys.
Okay.
Drop it on here somehow.
All right. Yeah, or you can, I think there's a chat or something, send you an email too.
Well, to interject with what Anne-Marie was saying, I think that trying to like psychologically get in the mindset of a kid and I played these games numerous times and trying to see where not exactly the holes are, but how to make this like a uniform, cohesive product. I think going through all the elements of the game and having the style and the fonts and the colors all mesh together as like a unified theme rather than disjointed, kind of how it is. Because I mean, the two games, specifically Aztech and Forgotten Trail, were built, separately from each other and put together. So it looks like a little bit of, what is that monster called, where it's like all these different parts. A chimera, or is that? No, I forgot. Yeah, it's like, it kind of looks like that. But so I've been trying to like simplify it and then build outwards. So trying to get the fonts all unified, the color and these transition slides, and trying to work with my team to have that happen. And I think that once those things are established, the game will come together a lot better. It's just getting to that point that we could pick a style, because there's like so many cool elements of the game if you add in the 3D or the 2D or the actual like storyboards, you could call them, and like what we're going to pick from to make it push forward rather than like keep going outwards in this kind of like fog where there's not one central theme to go forward from. And I think that's like the hardest part. So I'm trying to get to the bottom root of it and play it as much and see what like I can identify and kind of get in the mind of a kid and what they can attach themselves to. So I think I've kind of come to a style, and it's just trying to expand on that. And I don't see any problems moving forward as far as like the constraints financially. That's the only thing. Like I have some ideas of having some of these parts. I told Anne-Marie, having some of these parts and elements like these movie sections, having that done in After Effects rather than like just a camera of Anne-Marie explaining how to do the artwork. So like kids can identify with that a little more, like writing the math problems down with sound overlay and you talking about how, you come to the kilometer versus the mile or whatever it was. I think there was a few different ones, but when you get something wrong, how they learn, and seeing that written out in a way that's a little bit more modern, which I can identify, a lot of kids can, rather than like, just a 2D shot of you explaining it. I think that could help move things forward too. So a lot of different ideas in that realm, but I just want to make sure that the budget can allocate these ideas too. So I have like a good organized thesis of where I want this to go. It's just making sure it all can happen.
Well, and normally what we try to do with stuff is try it out, and then if it works, we do more of it, and if it doesn't, we do less of it or don't do it anymore. And the other thing is, like, I think the idea is great, and I would love, and going back to Jane McGonigal, one of the things she says is, why do people play Tetris? You cannot win Tetris. And in school, we're always saying, oh, kids should not fail and they should have success. But people play these games where they die. I mean, not literally. And one of the reasons is they fail in interesting ways. You know, that's why, like in Spirit Lake, when they get the herbs wrong, we want them to, you know, they come back and people are puking and stuff. So that would be great. And I think we should do a couple of those, because I would like to do a lot more of that, to say, you know, when you get this math problem wrong, like I just did a thing the other day on Jose, and he tries to trade a quetzal feather for banana, because he goes out in the woods and or forest, and he finds one of each. And the villager throws a spear at him, because actually, if you look at distributions, usually you'll find 20 times as many. You know, if we could do that stuff into little video clips, that would be great. But I think one of the first things to do is maybe take one of those, do it, see how much it costs, how long it takes. And then you know, I'm big in testing things. Well, what do you think, Derek? I mean, your focus is, oh, sorry, Sam, what were you gonna say?
Oh, good, you guys can hear me now. Okay, great. So kind of like what you were just saying a minute ago, and we're talking, and kind of back to what Rhonda was saying too about new, or like what makes people want to keep playing the game versus what makes them want to quit it. And especially when you look at something like Pokemon or WoW, you have so many options. You know, you don't only have to have new. If you log into the game and you have new and that's it, and that's your only option, you're going to get really bored with it. But the thing about Pokemon is, well, you could do new, or you could do Charmander, or you could do Squirtle, or the same thing with WoW. You know, Rhonda was talking about how she wanted to get the flying mounts, but other people don't care about flying mounts at all, and they want to do questing, or they want to do just having different options. And I think that's what people like about kind of what you were saying a minute ago, with dying in interesting ways, just to have something novel. Because even if you have two options, at least kids feel like they have a choice. Where if they just keep hitting their head on the same quest over and over, and they're just not getting it, or they just don't like that kind of game, I feel like that blinds people to quit.
What she said. Yeah, so that's what I noticed playing the games. I stalled out early on both. They're both linear. They both had frustrating user interface issues for me. It might have been an interaction with my browser, but because they were linear, and because they had these linear scenes that were explaining background, and I was like, oh, click, oh, Jesus Christ, skip. I couldn't skip. And I couldn't move on to make a choice to do what I wanted to do. And that, you know, one of the mistakes I'm hearing being made in here is that you're drawing comparisons. You're saying we don't have all this money, but you're drawing comparisons to these games. I haven't heard one yet that had less than 8 figures.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And these are people who have been making games, you know, for 30 plus years. It's, you know, we're just not in that weight class.
Right.
And I feel like one of the things I'm really curious about here is, you know, Justin was describing, you know, how his worry is that things are kind of spreading, and, you know, which way is this going to go? And that's, you know, that's going to kill you with a limited budget. You really need to pick your battles. And so this brings me back to, and the other thing I'm hearing is, but at the same time, you're talking about these movies where you give these sort of mini lectures. And what I find curious about most teaching happening in the US right now is that it is done by lectures, and the research shows that this is one of the least effective ways to learn, and that, you know, getting people to do things is much more effective than getting, which is the whole point of games, right? So I would sort of beg the question of, like, do you want to move in this direction of, hey, here's a movie that lectures you on how to do this thing, Or do you want to pull back and say, okay, well, we just went off and back to, the previous model of teaching. Do you want to pull it back and invest those resources into a more interactive way that leads them to do the thing? But I guess my big question is, you mentioned these constraints that you have, and you mentioned that you're abandoning what's not working and you're sticking with what is working. I'm curious about the answer to those two questions. What are those constraints and what is working?
All right, well, one of the things that's working, what we do is in every one of the games, if you get something wrong, so Forgotten Trail and Aztech are both in progress, you get a choice of different ways to learn. So some people, and I'm one of those people, actually would like to just sit here and have somebody tell me this is how you do it. I always hated those things as well, like, figure out the answer for yourself. I'm like, shut up, you're the teacher, you know the answer, tell me how you did this.
Yeah.
So we generally give them 3 choices where they have a choice of, watching a little video. They have a choice of reading it on a web page or having the web page read to them, or they have a choice of doing something. So like they can play a matching game, they can, on the graphs, they can drag and drop little graphs. So one of the things that's been effective in keeping people
So watch a
engaged-
video, they can read something, or they can do something.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically different modes of instruction. And so it's based on a lot of research we did and other people did. So that's one thing that's working.
Mhm.
Having short intervals, and I think this is even up to a fairly higher age, you see people that we try and keep it to about 2 to 3 minutes of gameplay punctuated by 2 to 3 minutes of learning stuff. And so that's one of the things that's been effective in maintaining interest.
How do you know that?
Because we go in and we observe over and over and over in kids playing the games in computer labs. And that we see that if it goes on for very long, like if it's 4 or 5 minutes, like we had somebody, which I want to go on record saying I disagreed with, but want to put in this 20-minute video on like long division or something. And nobody wanted to watch it,
Sure.
And they're like, oh, this is on the Khan Academy. Nobody wanted to watch it. So like
So 2 to 3 minutes of gameplay, and then what?
And then something that, so about every 2 or 3 minutes, we try and have a math or learning activity come up. And the kids, of course, would love it to be all game. But if you're going to have it in the classroom, people are replacing math class with this game.
Yeah.
And so you can't have them play a game all of math class and say, wasn't that fun? Because, all the students would say yes, but all the teachers would not be pleased.
Yeah.
And so what we found is that was about as little math as we could get away with and still have them using the schools and have the teachers not be saying, where's the math, where's the education in it? And if we had more than that, it was just math problems with an occasional, little thing thrown in.
So it's like a test, the math part. They'll be given a challenge and they
Right.
answer correctly.
Right.
Okay.
And we would really like, and as far as the constraints, part of the constraints come in because, who we've got in this room and on video is pretty much our team. And so there's only so many of us, and Miranda and Gonzalo are still in school. So they just insist on going.
Your team is here too, or?
Not
Oh,
really.
yeah, there's a couple
okay.
other artists.
Stefan and Jean, yeah.
Yes, and so because we're a small company, they're all working part-time pretty much. A lot of people working part-time. And so it's just, the big constraint is the number of hours of people to work on it.
Yeah. So the main constraints sound just mostly like manpower.
Right,
And time, I imagine.
right.
Yeah.
And
What's your schedule? What's your deadline?
well, for Aztech, we have to have an MVP done by, at the very, very, very latest. And it would make my heart happy if it was earlier, the middle of February, because we have to submit a proposal to the Department of Agriculture by the end of February to say, this is what we have done. Please give us another $450,000 in phase 2. So
But
that's our,
that MVP goes with the application.
well, it doesn't go into them with it, but we have to describe what we did and we have to test it and how the usability test came out. And so obviously, if we don't have anything, we can't do any usability testing with it.
Oh, interesting. So it's not the game itself that gets submitted, it's the usability testing.
Right, it's the results. So they want to know not just did you, like kind of what you asked, not just did you make a game, but did kids play it? Could they use it? What were the problems you found? If we give you another $500,000 or so, what are you going to do with that to make this game better?
But the
So-
game is not submitted.
No.
Okay.
No, it's a 15-page application with a lot of data. And then for Forgotten Trail, we met our deadline as far as giving it to the Kickstarter people. So we don't have a fixed deadline, but the better it gets, the more people are going to want to use it and buy it and play it. And so there's no point in having a game that nobody plays.
True.
And so right now what we have is a beta version where we've pretty much got a lot of the programming in place that this will automatically score the quizzes and it will save the data and teachers can look at it and you can move from the HTML to the Unity 3D part and back. And then one of the things that we run into, and here's one of the reasons, like we were saying, it looks like kind of a rough cut, which it is. One of the reasons is because we ran into these problems with like the installation, and so now we're going to have to change a lot of those 3D parts to 2D parts and be played on the web or played on an iPad. If we had spent $7 million developing that and then found that out, that would have been kind of dumb.
Yeah.
So now that we've kind of said, for now, this is what we have to do, we can go forward with more of the things Justin's talking about, making it more into a, cohesive game and not going in 7 directions. Because part of the 7 directions part is say, well, how about this and how about this? And now we've figured out more of this is the direction we want to go. Because you're right, if we go in 7 different directions, we're going to end up with 7 half-ass levels and everyone's play.
Yeah. So what I imagine you have some kind of goal for how many subjects you need to teach or what depth of subjects you need to teach for this. I'm just going to focus on the Aztech game right now because it sounds like a more immediate deadline. But is there a certain, because you mentioned some teachers are now incorporating aspects into the curriculum. Is there some range of subjects or just some range of grade levels you're focused
Yes,
on?
each one we focus on specific things because I've been one of these people that always say that, and it's not unique with me, that curriculum in America for math is a mile wide and an inch deep, that you learn a tiny little bit about math, but about each part of math and you never really fully understand it. And so like for Aztech, we're focusing on statistics in part because it's near and dear to my heart. And so people understand the idea of distribution, variability, and maybe if people understood this, we wouldn't have such idiots about climate change, for example, that there's a difference between today's weather and the climate. And so that's really going to focus on trying to, by the end of it, you should read some graphs and then you should start to understand what variability is and what what average is and what it means and how to calculate it. And so to go through that in multiple examples in multiple ways.
What grades do you find this is getting taught in?
Well, here's the funny thing that we found is that we started, all of these games are taught in far higher grade levels than we had anticipated. So we go into a lot of low-income schools where there is maybe 1 kid in the class that's at grade level. So if it's a 4th grade class, 25 out of 26 kids are at 3rd grade level or below.
Wow.
So if a game is designed for 6th grade level, it will probably be played primarily in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So generally, the whole idea of grade level standards is kind of a myth. If you go into some schools in Santa Monica, you'll probably find that more than half the class is at grade level or above, which would make it sense that's their grade level, but it's not typical. Anyway, I
So
wanted.
it correlates with socioeconomic.
Oh, it certainly correlates with socioeconomic.
So you're basically focusing on these subjects because that's what you're passionate about, and then you're finding the teachers that are like, hey, I could use that in my curriculum.
Well, one of the reasons we're doing statistics is I know that well.
Sure.
And I have a lot of credentials to say I know how to teach statistics and I've done it, and it's part of the curriculum. And so where teachers will use the games is if they're teaching, statistics in the 4th month of the semester, then that's when they'll start playing.
Okay.
So anyway, Derek, you've been really quiet here, so I want to know, do you have some ideas on you work, this is your sweet spot, right, of kids of this age, right? So the middle school group, yes?
Yeah. Obviously, the kind of game you're talking about is pretty much, from what I understand, kind of open world, as in there's not one set course that you have to go. You can make up your mind as you go, to a degree. Obviously, that throws up some issues when it comes to telling the story. If it's the player who is running the plots, then it's no longer the developers or the writers who are dictating what the story is. So then I think in just as far as the writing of it goes, in as far as the characters and how they would appeal to players, you've just got to make them unique and theoretically funny as possible, as interesting as possible, as unique as possible. Just because of the limitations afforded to you by an open world game. And I don't know if anyone else looked at the link that Rhonda sent over about Paper Mario. I just have it open here. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's a 3D background and it's very simple characters in 2D, simply animated. So just in terms of a visual style, because we're not talking about a multi-million company, with top PS4 graphics. Something like this, it's the approach more than anything else. It's the attitude to the character and the character design and the animation. I mean, the Paper Mario, it's just wonderful.
Huh. Well, that's something to look into.
I'd love to caution that whereas Paper Mario has a cheaper look to it, a cheaper to produce look, it's actually not that much cheaper to make. There's a very strong, bold, stylistic choice that creates the illusion of being lower budget. But I find the reality is that low budget is what actually costs your team less to make, and you can really only discover that empirically, right? Like, start doing something, you seem to do it fast enough. You do? Fucking A, keep doing it, But I totally agree with what Justin said, that the consistency is huge. You can have some lumpiness in the pacing, and you'll naturally find the masochists like Rhonda who will be like, fuck yeah, I worked so hard on this, I kick ass, and you all are beneath me, right? But
I think he's met you, B.
but that's not the average kid, right? That's the competitive kid and the one with the high pain tolerance. The average kid is, you need to kind of fool them into thinking they've learned and that sort of thing. And you have to make guesses about what pacing is going to work for them, right? What you can't do is have uneven art direction. Nobody is tolerant of that. So I find it's usually better to take all the art direction. First, what a lot of these examples that we're bringing up is open world games. I think they're a great way to go for learning because, as we've said, it gives you a choice. If something is scaring you and freaking you out, you have this other path you can take that may be more accessible, and that's key, especially in education, right? But it's also more challenging to make. But it's smartest if you can stand it, as far as budget goes, to make that shitty, fucking god-awful looking game that's fun to play and has lots of different ways to play it that looks horrible. And then once you understand the scope of this game and all the possible outcomes, and you realize, oh, I want a cookie here, I want a cookie there, when he solves this quest, I want a cookie. You know what all the big set pieces are, you know what all the goals are. Then you look back and you talk to Justin and his art team and say, okay, this is the scope of this thing. Can we do this all photoreal? Maybe not. Can we do this cartoon style? Maybe. Can we do it all with pencil sketches? Fuck yeah, we can do pencil sketches, right? And we can do this huge world with pencil sketches. And once you make that choice and go consistent with it, across the board. Now it suddenly looks like an intentional artistic decision.
That was exactly what I kept running into.
Yeah.
Right? Like as far as what style should I choose for this? What's easiest? What takes the least amount of time? Because there's all
Yeah.
these tasks and I was having to do them. So it's like
Yeah,
there's a lot of mix and matching.
bouncing around.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you have to really match it to your team's strengths
Yes.
too, right? Like what style can they all
And I
duplicate?
think there has been like a strength that's presented itself in that team, and I want to move towards that.
Yeah.
And it's just whether or not he can commit to being that much of, like that much time commitment. So
Yeah. Just as far as the method to making something like that work, that's how I'd recommend approaching it. As long as you can stand it, if you can make the game super fucking ugly, it's really the way to go. It's tough on morale,
Yeah.
but it really, it's like eating your fiber. You know, it's not delicious, but
necessary.
it's necessary. And once you, and if you can handle that pain, then what's on the other side of that is beautiful, wonderful shit.
Well, and here's, a lot of times when people look at our games, here's one of the things about being funded by grants,
Uh-huh.
is you have a fixed deadline and you have no negotiating power whatsoever. The federal government says, we want this application by February 26th, close of business, Eastern time.
Yeah.
And that's it. And so like our earlier games, and I guess I'll just skip down to, sometimes it's kind of disheartening because with all the stuff we want to do, and people say, you should add this and you should add that, and they're all correct.
Yeah.
And yet,
You gotta pick your poison.
well, and then, like Eric and Gonzalo are always working on like different levels, like an easy level, a medium level, and a hard level. And hard level is way too hard for most kids, but the easy level is not challenging for like you and the Miranda and Rhonda and Eric. So it can be very frustrating, but it's good to remember that we've been down this road before. And the first time we did Spirit Lake, like Justin was here at the beginning, we did Spirit Lake and Fish Lake, and oh my God, Dennis and I were up until 5:30 a.m., fixing bugs in the hotel room the day before we put in the first school. And it was just still so many things. And when we had a list of hundreds of features, and we went back and we put hundreds of them in, and then we went back again and put hundreds of them in, and we'll do it again. So with Aztech, we have to get something playable. And yeah, you're right, it is really disheartening because you look at it and you think, everything everybody tells us is right, but
what's right for you?
well, and you can only do so many of those things at a time. And so we get something that is playable, and then we go back and we start, we basically iterate on it. And
I would like to ask a stupid question.
ask away.
What do you mean when you say playable? Because you said at the very beginning that 20% of the kids can finish the game, so 80% don't. What is the metric of this is a playable game versus this is not playable?
Well, as far as the usability testing for an MVP, it's that you can install it, you can understand how it's supposed to be played, there is gameplay, so everything works. So there's a difference between usability and so like usability testing
It has
effect.
nothing to do with how attractive it is.
No.
But
No, it's like that's the minimum part of minimum viable product. You can install it, people understand how it works. When I click on it, it doesn't crash my system. You can move around in it. If it's supposed to be saving your game state, it does that. If we're supposed to be reporting to teachers how many kids pass level 5, we can do that. So all of the things that you say could be done, and then another part of it for us is because we're trying to appeal, also make it usable by kids that have special needs. If they're learning disabled, they can click the button, it can be read to them. So it basically is that real bare minimum, because if you can't get to that, you can't do anything. And then, so that's the MVP for the phase 1. And then after that, and it's crazy timelines, like you get 8 months to develop a game that can be played by kids. So you get less than 8 months because part of that time is being played by kids. And part of that time is writing up your results. So basically you have 6 months to create a playable game. And that's a pretty insane deadline.
The finished game.
And the finished game that they can play. I mean, obviously you've got to loop around after that and say, we're going to now make this a game that people want to play a whole bunch. So to get from that 20% to 80%.
So how much time do you get for that phase?
2 years.
Oh,
Yes,
in addition to the 8 months.
yes. And generally what we
Whereas I gotta
do,
plug my meter in.
there's generally a 6-month gap in funding between when you finish the phase 1 and when you get to phase 2. And so we did a seed round and we're able to raise some funds to patch that gap so we can keep working on it.
Got it.
So hopefully we will have like 2.5 years. And so a lot of the stuff you could think, oh my God, we're so far from there. But if you look at what can we do in 2.5 years, hopefully something really good. It still won't be what you could get for 8 figures, but I mean, we have $1 million worth of genius in this room, right? So I'm going by that and sticking to it.
Flatter me
I'm
more.
right, more.
That really helps. So that's interesting. Those are very different constraints than I thought. So the rough budget for phase 1 and phase 2 is what-ish?
Well, what we get from the federal government is we get $100,000 for phase 1, $450,000 for phase 2.
Okay.
And if you look at that, and then we raised another $75,000 in crowdfunding, and then we just closed a seed round for about $240,000. And if you look at it, with that, we have finished 2 commercial games, Spirit Lake and Fish Lake, and we've got one that's in beta and then one that's really under rough development. So given the constraints, we've done a pretty amazing amount.
Sure.
But there's just this huge amount left.
Well, I was actually just going to ask that. So how much funds are left, and what is that huge amount left for?
Well, the $450,000, we still have to apply for that. So that would be, assuming we get it. Now, half of the phase 1s get phase 2. I have never been principal investigator one that did not get it, but there's always a first time.
Sure.
So I always say they don't give you points. That's why they don't give out medals in the Olympics in advance. So, so yes, all of that would be left, assuming that we get it.
The 450,
Right.
Okay, but the 75, 240, 100, that's all been spent.
No, we probably have about 150 of that left.
Okay.
Considering that we're pretty good about delivering bang for our buck.
Got it.
I would say we're really good about that.
Can I show you the best game I've ever played?
Sure. Did you make it?
Fuck no, I'm not this talented. That's it. It's ugly as hell. It's called NetHack. It's been made over the course of about 30 years by a group of people online. And it's where the games Diablo came from. It's the progenitor to World of Warcraft, to Legend of Zelda, every major role-playing game out there. It's different every time you play it. It's permadeath, so it's super challenging. You die on a lot. And when you die, you have to start over. Going from start to winning will take you a solid, focused 48 to 72 hours. And obviously you can't do that without sleep or eating or whatever, right? But most times you'll spend...
I heard you do. I've heard about you.
Not anymore. Those days are past. But most of those times you'll get about maybe a couple hours in and you die. A couple hours, die. And then every once in a while you'll get 10 hours in and you'll die.
It's called NetHack?
It's called NetHack. It has nothing to do with network gameplay. The net part has to do with, also has nothing to do
Hear
with...
that, Rhonda? You've been challenged. NetHack.
Yeah, the learning curve is gruesome. The graphics are as ugly as you can ask for. And that has forced the developers to make it different every time you play it, and really challenging, exciting. And it uses to maximum effect the addictiveness of...
what is it that people like? Because so far it sounds pretty terrible.
I love her. What's your name?
Samantha.
Samantha. I love everything she says. It's, have you ever played Dungeons and Dragons?
Sure, yeah. I was like, wow, I'm into all that.
Okay, so it's got all of that geekiness. It's got loot drops. It's got character development. You've got stats. You've got skills. You've got, you start with a pet kitten or little dog. You can name everything, including your
And then it
pets.
dies.
They often die. But you know what? You can pick up tripe rations.
I
and
think,
you can-
Derek, this is your game.
You can throw them to other creatures and tame them, and eventually you can have pet dragons and pet. I mean, it's just you can find these artifacts of power. There's these specific quests, but then there's these randomly generated levels. I mean, it's just sprawling and enormous, and it's this really complex world. It's different every time you play it, and they really understand
Click this screen
the value
so we
of.
can see.
They understand the value of random reinforcement, which is what all the casinos understand.
Mhm.
Which is that if you don't know exactly what you're going to get every time, you're going to get addicted. And if every once in a while there's a big exciting prize, but most of the time it's kind of boring. And then, whoa, oh my God, what was this? You get hooked, right? And it's really hard to pace that well, especially in an educational context. But this sort of thing, once you get really good at this game, it teaches you to never make mistakes. It teaches you to pour through the source code and understand how it's programmed. You will do it. You have to, or else you will waste another 20 hours. It hooks you. It hooks you so hard. And I find the best games out there do this sort of thing. You really can go in.
Is this game wildly popular, or does this game have a cult following? Because I'm wondering if it's really difficult, how many people log in once, die, and go through it.
Go to thegreatestgameyouwilleverplay.com.
That's a really great marketing technique that doesn't answer the question at all.
You're right. It has. It's called NetHack. One word. It's one of those games where maybe you could call it cult at this stage. It's gone through huge periods of popularity, and then it has shrunk.
Yeah.
It has spun off an entire genre called roguelikes.
Oh,
So
yeah.
anytime you hear the name roguelike, they're talking about NetHack. NetHack is the predecessor of NetHack is Rogue. Rogue, ironically, didn't actually get played that much, but NetHack got played tons and still gets played. There's still yearly contests. So it is kind of the progenitor of all those. It is the deepest and most complex of all of those. And it's a model that I think is good to look at.
Mhm.
Because it does what I'm talking
Right.
about, where you pull back on the
Right.
art direction and production values, and you focus in on how do we hook them.
Well, and you're making a really good point too, because I think what you said too, when we keep comparing ourselves, and I know Rhonda and I have had this discussion before too, when she said, come over to my house and watch me play World of Warcraft and see this stuff.
Yeah,
And I said, they have $1 billion and we don't.
yeah,
And she said, don't you think with that $1 billion, they learned some stuff that you could copy? So
yeah.
I think like the dog, hopefully you guys will be able to see it if I show you the video that Justin and Chris have been working on for Perseverance. I'm gonna show us one last thing, and before we run out of time, I want to find out if Derek has some suggestions, but I wanted to show if I can find it, and hopefully y'all will be able to.
John's also throwing out that if you're kind of looking at Warcraft, you might want to look at some of the original Warcraft games, specifically Warcraft 1 and Warcraft 3. Warcraft 3 specifically, because it's the same company, but they had a lot less money back then. But they
That's a good point.
were successful because
The art was so really popular, even though they're very simplistic.
Can you guys see this video now or no? All right, so this is they're working on this still, obviously.
Hey there, look down. What's the matter?
It just seems too hard. No matter how far I've come, it just seems like there's no end. There's only further to go. I just want to give up.
I know how you feel. I've been there. It feels like you've been trying so hard and putting so much effort in, you can't see the results. But it takes time. Don't run up a hill 2 times and expect to be ready to run in the Olympics. It's about putting in the effort time and again, about getting up each day and doing the work. It's incremental. Whenever I get stressed about how much further I want to be in my life compared to where I am right now, I look back and realize how far I've come. When I do that, I see that I am where I am today because I didn't give up and because I kept working hard, even when I wanted to give up, especially when I wanted to give up.
I guess.
Well, how far have you gone so far? I'm guessing it wasn't just the bottom of this hill, right? Maybe a few blades of grass over?
No, we've gone 907 miles. We started right on North Dakota and Minnesota.
And you've made it all the way here.
Yeah, we have.
That's a pretty good start. Anyway, I gotta get back to training. If you want to be better, whether it's MMA, math, or making your way across the country, you've got to keep working. Oh, and by the way, this isn't my dog. The guy at the bottom of the hill was just selling her. Who just sells their dog? Anyway, she needs someone to take care of her, and it looks like you could use a dog. My dog always makes me feel better.
Thanks.
So anyway, this is the rough cut. Obviously, Justin's working on stuff like that. They will be able to
Blink and the bug
Blink and
bugs.
stuff like that. But
I run like, oh my god.
Those strides are like Usain Bolt
I'm
level.
from the like the Ministry of Funny Walk.
You got a long stride, girl.
anyway, their kick is on the costume. So Derek, you are on the hook to say something brilliant because I said you would.
Deep.
Excellent, wonderful, no pleasure. I mean, from that video alone, it makes you look at it and go, okay, you can actually have proper interactions here. You can have definite engagements between the players and the NPCs. And if there's one thing that will not cost money, it's humor. I've always found throughout my career the best way to engage an audience, to engage a person, a reader, or a viewer is humor. It's better than drama, it's better than sadness, it's better than romance, it's better than anything. Humor is the key. Humor also costs very, very little. It's practically free. And you can have that. You can use humor, characters, interactions, and apart from anything else, that would be enough to get the kids paying more. And that is free. That is cheap. And I have said I will work on the script. I will. Shut up, cat. Sorry, I've got a cat out the window. I have said I'll work on this, and I'm not going to charge. I already have more money than I know what to do with. So I'm fine working this way.
We would be so super appreciative.
Awesome.
Oh, we have to run out of here because we're getting kicked out of our conference room. But all I could say is thank you very much, and we will be in touch with all of you. Rhonda, I need to come over and get some stuff signed for the church because they're doing a church auction and they're calling us and telling us to get out of the conference room. So, all right. Thank you, guys.